I have to get back to this Wall Street Journal article, Jerry, and I know you've been making the rounds in the media, but again, fake news not picking it up. When you kept the dorms open or allowed them to be open, I mean, we had the New York Times was here. I mean, if you look at articles that were written, it said that, you were going to cause death and destruction in Central Virginia, and there'd be body bags in downtown Lynchburg. And I mean, not one of these people have apologized for the fact that 3 months later, I think one person got sick, and that's it, out of 10,000.
Well, to Bill McGurn's credit, he's a Wall Street Journal reporter. He called out of the blue last week, and he said, that what you just said is that they caused all this concern and told all these lies about cases at Liberty. And so he said, but when everybody left and there were no cases, they didn't correct themselves. And so he took it on himself to write that piece. We did an interview last Thursday, and then the press started picking it up from there, but mainly conservative press. The mainstream press still hasn't. And 750 news outlets picked up the original false New York Times story. But what was so insidious about that story is they came on campus at the week after spring break. We had no trespassing signs like we still do at every entrance. And unless you're here on official school business, and just they came from New York, Washington, Richmond, wherever, and they from hot spots, and in complete disregard for our students' health, they stayed on campus. We don't know how many days. They published a lot of pictures that they took while they were here, but then they never called us while they were here. They never talked to us. They talked to a doctor across town who referred them to our on-campus clinic doctor who knew the actual facts. They didn't talk to her. And so all they did was talk to a doctor whose practice had seen some kids with some upper respiratory allergies and colds and things. And so, long and the short of it is they were playing a game. They called us on Sunday after they left at noon, and they published the story at 3 o'clock that afternoon. And so, all of our people were scattered around on Sunday afternoon, and it was intentionally deceptive. And I've got the best law firm I could find in Manhattan, and it took me an hour to read the complaint yesterday against the New York Times, and it's powerful, and it goes into a lot of things they do besides what they did here at Liberty, just unethical, dishonest practices, and it could be a game changer.
Well, I mean, they came here to do a narrative, and so the evidence, when you do fake news, the evidence, the facts, the reporting is subservient to the narrative, Dave, and you've experienced this, subservient to the narrative that they want. So basically the way the fake news is done, me being in the business, is you find and only seek out those people that will buttress your narrative. Anybody that might dispute your narrative, you avoid, regardless of the fact that you should talk to them and get evidence. So they don't come here to report on something. They come to find a way to forward a false narrative through false means in order to get a result. That's exactly what you saw at Liberty, Jerry, and you called them out. But look, Dave in the 7th District experienced that 7 days a week for the whole time that you were in there.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I had 3 ethical plagiarism charges on my PhD a month before the election from New York Times, Washington Post, all the likely suspects, all the fashion magazines coming in. And then I had the head of Harvard rebut it. I'm all clean. It's all good. And then you never get the retraction. And President Falwell is being humble, but we did the right thing for our kids. We got kids who were better off health-wise staying here than going to a hot spot up in Jersey or New York with their grandparents. International kids who are here, every other university. And they just track us because our commitment to the Judeo-Christian tradition and the rule of law and free markets and pro-business, and that sets us apart.
But we had a campus built for 16,000. Only 1,200 were here for the last 6 or 7 weeks of the semester. And they were, a lot of them didn't have high-speed internet at home, and we had gone to completely an online format. And so they couldn't go home and do their studies because they didn't have the proper internet, some of them. Like Dave said, a lot of them were international, had elderly relatives at home. So it was the right thing to do. We did it in a way. The governor did two surprise inspections and found everything was done according to, perfectly. They gave us a glowing report. And so, we did what we thought was right, and the result was a good result. So just like in Florida and Texas, those governors did the right thing. They protected the population that was at risk, and look what happened there compared to New York. We did file criminal warrants against the against the reporters who trespassed, and the local Commonwealth's attorney did an excellent job of she spoke with me first, and we decided that the best thing to do, since it was a first offense, and even if they were convicted, they'd probably appeal and it would drag out. We decided the best thing to do was to get them to admit wrongdoing and to apologize. And she did a wonderful job of getting all that done. And so that showed our parents that we took it seriously, that we didn't want anybody on campus bringing this virus to our students.
Well, the other thing that they never mentioned is there were other campuses in America that were also open that did the same thing, right?
Yes.
University College of Los Angeles, I think, USC. There were several others.
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M.
Arizona State opened, and they had a lot more students on campus than we did, and they had 15 cases.
Right. So nobody went and did an expose on them,
No,
right? They just came here to
Right.
Lynchburg to target Jerry Falwell and to target the university because, as you say, it has Judeo-Christian values, and
Yep.
and that seems to be counter to the narrative of what these people want.
And just to be clear, I think we have 0 live cases on campus right now.
No, the whole semester we had 0. We had not one single staff, faculty, or student, not faculty or staff that had offices on campus or students who lived in the dorms, not one tested positive. And the only one that I know of was an off-campus online student who had not been on campus anyway. So, there goes their narrative.
After the New York Times piece.
Scott Lamb, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. After the New York Times piece came out, some of our departments actually had other universities call. Those other universities had 10, 15, 20 cases, active cases, 6 students, and they were calling us under the assumption that the New York Times had spoken, truth. And so they were calling and they said, hey, what are you guys doing in order to take care of the sick kids? And, some of our Sodexo, those kinds of employees said, well, we don't actually have any sick kids. We don't even actually have any kids that have it. And they're like, what? What are you talking about? Because the New York Times clearly were saying that, we had all these cases. Yeah. And so other universities that still had 10% or 15% of their student body in the dorms. And with 20, 30, 40 cases, we're at a loss of what to do, how to handle that situation. And here we were with no cases.
Zero.
Yeah, and yet hundreds of journalists calling. I was on the front line a lot of that, and they calling with the assumption. So, how many students are sick? How many students are dying? What are you doing? Are you guys burdening the local hospital system? And we're like, we're not burdening anybody. There wasn't anything. And yet the retraction, if there is a retraction, it's just a quiet little mea culpa. Well,
That's fake news. When the president talks about fake news, look, Dave knows this, and Rob to some extent. I'm a White House correspondent. Now what they've done, you guys probably don't know this, is the White House Correspondents Association, which is a totally corrupt organization, which kicked me out of it. Because I'm a Trump delegate, so they kicked me out, whatever. But I still have a hard pass. Well, the way they locked it down is when COVID-19 came, they took control of who goes in there. So they only allowed those that have assigned seats. And of course, they control the assigned seats. So people like me that came in every day and would ask a legitimate question, right, we get kicked out and they take complete control of it. I mean, the thing is so corrupt. Even the Ralph Northam press conferences are, because of COVID-19, I can't walk in. They're controlled by the Virginia Press Association that then picks the people who can participate in the press conference. So I can't get on to ask him a legitimate question. You had the other day a member of the Associated Press, get this, before he asked a question said, Governor, this question you might take this as a little confrontational, so I apologize in advance and then ask the question. But what? Dave, are you kidding me? Your job is to ask tough questions. It's like, let me apologize in advance for not asking if you're comfortable and would you like a cold soft drink or a hot cup of coffee or whatever they ask.
Yeah, well, and that's, President Falwell set up the Falkirk Center here dedicated to faith and freedom to explore some of this, right? You don't have a free country when you don't have a free press. As our founders, right, Jefferson, et cetera, wanted a rational system of government, rational inquiry. And when half the conversation's cut off, Ryan Helfenbein and Scott Lamb are setting up and bringing in world experts, and we're going to start documenting some of this press abuse. And President Falwell's taking on the New York Times, and so
all you
it's coming.
have to do is look at Northam's press conferences. For instance, when he said he's going to open up 50% of the beach. Nobody asked him, what's that, science and data? Like, what science is that?
No.
What basis is that? When he said, you can go to the beach, but you can't have an umbrella. Okay, what is that based on? So if you have an umbrella on the beach, does that spread the disease? I thought it protected you from sun cancer.
Yeah.
Nobody asked him that question. He said, you can go on the beach, but you can't play music. Okay, is there science and data that says if I play the Grateful Dead, which is my favorite band, if I play the Dead, that I'm going to get sick? I mean, what? Nobody asked him a single question about any of the science and data because they don't want to challenge him.
Well,
now, how is that a free press?
No, that's right. And one of the biggest questions, I heard a Swedish scientist expert. He said, all the rest of you countries are criticizing us right now. I'd like to know what's your plan for opening schools. When are you going to open them? What does the best science say on it? You won't hear a peep. Right now, the press is hiding under this test regimen. Yeah. And if you do any research on that, you do the science and the evidence and the data, both tests have problems. If you ask questions there, and then you say to the press, say we do the testing, then what? What happens? And there's no answer.
There's no answer.
There comes a day when people are going to have to face going out into public. No one wants to make that statement out in the public sphere, and the politicians are hiding under the rocks.
Robert Hurt just gave me Liberty University hand sanitizer. So let's say I go today and I test negative, Robert, and I do my hand sanitizer. Thank you, by the way, it's neat. And let's say I do that, and then I got to go to Charlottesville, and so I stop at the BP station to pump gas, right? I pump gas, and somebody that just pumped gas is positive, and now I get it on my hand, and I'm positive. But I just got a test. I'm negative, but now I'm positive. Do I test every day? Do I test every hour? Do I test 3 times a day? Do I test in perpetuity? I mean, what do tests mean? I mean, when you think about it in those terms, what does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, I think that what history is going to teach us is that at the end of the day, common sense, people who have respect for themselves and for each other and the way they conduct their day-to-day lives, in terms of just normal hygiene.
Right.
I think that's the way out of this, it seems to me. And having overbearing government action that tells us that we're too stupid to be able to take care of ourselves, I think is also what history is going to reveal. And we've never been here before. But I think that is what history is going to show.
Yeah, and on the testing, the science on the testing is that the tests are only 30% accurate. You've never heard that, right? So then you say, okay, if the tests are 30% accurate, and then you get your conclusion, what action are you going to take on that basis? And so the press is out playing a game. They're always one step ahead with a clever, well, we got to do testing. President Trump's failing on the testing. No, he's not. They know, right, if they do the testing, what the implications are. And it's not the solution. It might help you better target folks in high-risk zones, but it doesn't get rid of the virus. That's the issue, right? No one's got an answer to that one.
I'll just open it with a general question. Is there going to be a political reckoning of this?
I think people, I see what happened in, it was some city, Stanton, Virginia, that, tell me what happened. It went for.
Scott sent the story.
Yeah, we talked about that last
Go ahead,
hour.
Scott. Scott Lamb.
Apparently, the whole city council flipped from Democrat. They've been Democrat for a generation or longer, and in the recent election, the whole city council went red. And the 2 issues when polled were guns and and the COVID lockdown. Folks need to remember that before the mid-March lockdown, right before that, Virginian conservative patriots were up in arms against our governor.
Right.
We had the January gun rally, thousands upon thousands of people. Of course, you couldn't do that now because we can't get out of our homes to go rallies. So I think it's very convenient for Governor Northam that we can't rally and bring the pitchforks and state our grievances against him. I know our own President Jerry Falwell had taken leadership with a movement called Vexit, to just
Vexit?
to actually just ask the question. I mean, if Northam really just doesn't care about the rest of Virginia, then what are we? What are we going to do about this? And all of a sudden that entire conversation was completely shut down because we had to all stay in our homes.
Vexit.
Well, once we get out of our homes, people are going to start remembering. Now, what were we talking about back in February? Oh yeah, our governor and all of his atrocious dictatorships.
Well, those of us that live in Hampton Roads were very upset about Vexit because you were going to leave us with Northam. So it was like, well, that's not fair. So I had Jim Justice, the governor of West Virginia, on my show about a month ago before this started with Vexit, and he said, yeah, we'd love to have you. We could just actually annex everybody and just have a fight over it.
Virginia, the interesting thing is that if counties in Virginia decide to put it on the ballot this fall, they can leave Virginia, go to West Virginia without Richmond's approval.
They can?
And without Washington's approval.
Really?
And that's the only state in the country where that's true because of the way West Virginia's constitution was set up. So we're going ahead with we're texting. We've got the names of every registered voter in Virginia. We're texting them all. If you sign this petition if you want it on the ballot this fall and in your county, and you go to your county, select it, your city, whatever, and who knows? We'll see. But we're not backing off. In fact, it might be easier to do it now while everybody's sitting no.
You need to get my show involved in that because
I would love to.
Even though I'm in Chesapeake, so I'm carved out of it.
I don't know that you carved out of it. It could go south.
Let's get out.
Up the river.
We don't want to go to North Carolina.
The new state could go south of Richmond and out to the coast.
Go to West Virginia.